In the early 70s, NHRA began the Pro Stock class, giving Detroit its own head-knocking hot rod arena. Through the 80s, they attained speeds their counterparts in the fuel classes achieved only a decade earlier. Today, in the 90s, these sleek aerodynamic machines now travel in the 6-second zone on the doorstep of 200 miles per hour. Under the skin beats a 500 cubic inch heart. But it's the driver that turns hearts into muscle. Today, the best meet the best as the top 8 drivers face off in the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. For over a decade, race fans have expected the Pro Stock Challenge to bring them, well, the best 8 Pro Stock cars in the world. And it always has until today. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Evans, but I think all these fans will understand because something very strange happened in a very unlikely place. Fairfield, Illinois is what the media calls flyover country. The kind of place where people leave the keys in their cars and their front doors unlocked, enjoying the good, quiet life in an agricultural community. The biggest thing in town, the Wayne County Speed Shop. Well, Tuesday night, vandals broke into the Wayne County Speed Shop, home of the numbered 1 and 2 Pro Stock cars in all the world, Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffrey. The damage they did cannot be described. Damaged blocks, damaged engines prevents this team from competing here this weekend in the challenge and the Mopar Parts
It's unbelievable that this can happen, and you know, we're just in total shock, and we're just trying to overcome it. All we can do is move forward. We've already backed up.
So how does that affect the field? Well, not too adversely because alternates come in. How about Larry Morgan in the Oldsmobile, a 3-time winner of the challenge, and the winningest Pro Stock driver in history in his Ford, Bob Glidden. They have been added to the field. In fact, let's take a look at the Valvoline ladder and see how they faced off today in the 11th annual challenge. Dave McClellan?
Steve Evans, we've got 8 great drivers. Unfortunately, 2 of them, as you said, will not be in competition, but to our advantage, one of them will be in the broadcast booth with me, one half of the Dodge Boys team, Scott Jeffrey. What better time than right now to take a close-up look at the 8 competitors in this year's running of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. Qualifying in the number 8 spot, Mark Osborne, who made the field with Greg Racing's equivalent of a last-moment Hail Mary pass in Memphis.
You know, it really puts the pressure on the crew and the driver and the engine builder. It's really hard. We just hope we can be fortunate enough to overcome those differences in the points lead again this year.
Appearing in his 6th challenge and fresh off a win 2 weeks ago in Memphis is consistent Mark Powing.
One of my dreams when I first started was to try to make the Pro Stock Challenge, and it shows that, especially to my crew, I guess their hard work and dedication proves off that over the period of the last year of racing, we've been one of the top 8 cars on an average to qualify in the best 8 at every show, which is pretty tough to do in our Eliminator these days.
One of the wild cards in the DuPont deck is Pontiac driver Jim Yates. Quick in qualifying and tricky at race time.
We work so hard all year, and you know, you qualify 4, 5, or 6, you're not number 1 qualifier, so maybe you don't get the attention at that race, but this gives you the opportunity to run in front of everybody and say, you're part of the elite crowd, you're part of the bad boys.
Our 5th qualifier is the first driver in the 6s, Kurt Johnson.
We were fortunate enough to win it last year, that being my first year in the challenge. You got 8 tough guys out there. You got guys with a lot of horsepower. You have the 8 top qualifiers all season long. They've earned points, and it's going to be tough. I'm excited.
Steve Schmidt, engine builder for Mini, has the horsepower to dazzle in qualifying, but his race day performance is suspect.
It speaks highly of my crew and our engine program and what have you that we've basically averaged being the 4th qualifier for the last 19 races. We're proud of that.
Filling in for Mopar driver Scott Jeffrey is a reluctant but hopeful former winner, Larry Morgan.
We're going to take advantage of it. I think that we can win the race. It's not our first time, and I think that we can get back in there and do well here.
Our other alternate racer, Bob Glidden, is hopeful for a spirit-raising performance for his struggling team.
We've got new people, and anything good that could happen would really help the morale of all the people.
And at the head of the Elite 8, Warren Johnson, quick at every track and looking for a quicker trip to the bank.
The car, the crew, and everything has done what it takes to qualify the car well. We've got the numbers as far as performance numbers are concerned. That's just kind of a little pot at the end of the rainbow, that $50,000 that they put up.
All right, now that you've met the drivers in the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge, what about the factory hot rods they wheel to near 200 miles an hour? Well, to tell us about the cars, Bob Fry.
Steve, don't let this wing fool you. These Pro Stockers in the challenge here this weekend are the closest things to a stock-appearing car that we have in the professional classes in the National Hot Rod Association. This one looks like a Pontiac Firebird, the new-look Trans Am. But don't let these things fool you, because underneath this outside body beats the heart of a lion.
Despite its outward stock appearance, a modern NHRA factory hot rod, which must be of 1990 or newer design, is a pure race car underneath. Power is supplied by 500 cubic inch V8 engines, which must be manufactured by the same corporation as the body style. A fuel cell in the rear feeds high-octane racing gas to a pair of 4-barrel carburetors mounted on top of specially designed and built intake manifolds. These engines cost over $75,000 and produce over 1,200 horsepower, 8 times that of the average street car. All that power is sent to a multiple disc clutch and 5-speed gearbox to 17-inch wide racing slicks that are just slightly smaller than top fuel tires. Some transmissions, like Malenko, are shifted manually. Others rely on push-button air shifters. The cockpits are Spartan designs with only the bare necessities of gauges, push buttons, and safety equipment. The chassis, which costs over $40,000 itself, is a complex cocoon of over 400 feet of chrome moly tubing on which the suspension is mounted. At the front, you'll find McPherson struts and coil-over shocks. At the rear, an adjustable four-link system allows the crew chief to adjust to changing track conditions. Stopping power is supplied by 4-wheel disc brakes and 1 or 2 rear-mounted parachutes. Now, to earn the name stock, the roof and rear quarter panels are factory units and must match templates and specs provided by the manufacturer. The remaining body components are made of either fiberglass or other lightweight materials. So all told, a finished car weighs a minimum 2,350 pounds as it covers the quarter mile in 7 seconds at the threshold of 200 miles an hour.
Well, today, the Pro Stock Challenge has found a permanent home here at Raceway Park as part of the Mopar Parts Nationals, but it wasn't always that way. If memory serves me right, the first one was in 1985, Indianapolis Raceway Park. I can see it all now. It's coming back.
The initial Pro Stock Challenge was a part of the 1985 U.S. Nationals festivities in Indianapolis. Earlier that year, David Rare and Buddy Morrison replaced the late Lee Shepard with Bruce Allen. In the first round, Allen met up with the number 8 qualifier, Don Campanello. Bruce scored a solid win with a run of 7.62 at 180 miles an hour. At that race, Bob Glidden was the man to beat, but the eventual Winston champion that year fouled out against Allen in the Final Four, sending the Rare and Morrison team to the finals. Meanwhile, the same fate befell Warren Johnson when he faced Butch Leo, and that set up the inaugural Pro Stock Challenge final round. At the green, Allen left first, and that was the difference at the finish line as the Rare and Morrison Camaro took home $15,000 with a 7.60 run at 181 miles an hour.
Stay with us, everyone. When we come back, the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge round number 1, and you'll hear the sound of 1,400 horsepower in Dolby surround sound. So stay with us. We'll be right back to Englishtown here on TNN Live. At Raceway Park in Englishtown, New Jersey, with live coverage here on TNN of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. And what a treat it is to have all this beautiful weather after the season NHRA has suffered. Why don't we right now turn our watches back about 2 hours to race number 1 in the challenge? Mark Powick and Larry Morgan. Here's Dave McClellan and Scott Jeffrey on, as they called it.
Round number 1 of the DuPont Automotive Finishes Pro Stock Challenge, a pair of Oldsmobiles. The number 7 qualifier at the wheel of the Summit Racing Oldsmobile, it is Mark Powick against Larry Morgan in the Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile Cutlass. Morgan, of course, coming in as the alternate for Darrell Alderman. Joining me here in the booth is Darrell's teammate, Scott Jeffrey, on one half of the Mopar Dodge Boys team. And you have got to have some emotion at the moment watching alternates fill in for both yourself and your partner, Darrell Alderman. Scott Jeffrey on.
Yeah, it sure does feel too good to be up here in the booth rather than down there on the racetrack. But Larry Morgan, you know, he just missed qualifying, and he got in as an alternate, as did Bob Glidden. Obviously, me and Darrell would rather be down there racing right now.
Well, we look forward to your return. Hopefully, it will be as early as Columbus in the Spring Nationals. Right now, we're concentrating on this The DuPont Pro Stock Challenge, $50,000 payday awaiting the winner of this event. The two Oldsmobiles now pre-staged. Let's see if any games are played, as a psychological war could be waged at this moment. Both cars having lots of problems. Pauig finally electing to shut off the Summit Racing Oldsmobile. And Larry Morgan, who has been in the finals 4 times of this Pro Stock Challenge, wins round number 1 with a 7:48 at 188 miles an hour. Scott, on the replay, both cars had problems, but Pauig's a bit more severe. What went wrong?
It looks like the track conditions really changed here today from yesterday's tune-up, and it looks like they both got in a severe tire shake, and Larry was able to get through it.
As you see, Larry Morgan streaking to the finish line. He gets the big W light, but his time, a 7:48, not terribly competitive. Let's go down to the far end of the racetrack. Here's Steve Evans.
Well, Mac, as you said, Larry Morgan, one of the winningest drivers in the history of the Pro Stock Challenge, but one of the slowest to get out of his car. Doesn't seem to matter what happens, Morgan. You always win in this thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had her sideways. I wouldn't lift. I looked over and he wasn't there. I thought, I am going for it. I didn't care whether I put the thing into the wall.
There is more action in the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge, brought to you in Dolby Surround Sound when we return to Raceway Park.
Junior Conway has just given this 1967...
Hey, we're back at the Palace and Speed in the Northeast Raceway Park in Englishtown, New Jersey for more live coverage of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. In just a second, we're going to go back to that first round racing. But right now, let's get to know one of the drivers a little better. He wheels the McDonald's Pontiac, and his name is Jim Yates from the great state of Virginia.
Jim and Tony Yates enjoyed their best season to date last year with their first national event win at Brainerd and number 4 finish.
Hopefully, if we can continue to work hard at it, we can move up. But it's not easy at the top. You know, you got Warren Johnson, you got the Dodges ahead of you, and, you know, right behind you, you got a lot of guys that want to get where you're at. So it's a constant battle.
Along with being the Pro Stock team selected to join Joe Gibbs' McDonald's racing stable comes added visibility and responsibility.
The fact that he picked us, that's a real compliment. And at some points it puts a little pressure on us because, you know, Joe has selected us to be on the McDonald's racing team, and we're the Pro Stock entry, and we have to now go out and prove that we're capable of that appointment.
The team has matured into a consistent top qualifier. Along with chassis builder Jerry Bickle and engine specialist Richard Baskin, the Yates family also plays an important role.
My family has always been really supportive of the racing program. In fact, I think Tony likes Pro Stock racing more than I do. You know, if I ever get down and I say, boy, this is not worth the trouble, she's the one that says, come on, let's go get him. We can do it. We're having fun. Let's, you know, she's the one that makes everything fun.
There's another factor foremost in Jim's mind that makes him appreciate where he's come from and the opportunities he's been afforded.
Today, if you're going to be involved in racing, you have to understand that the fans are the most important part of the program out here. I really enjoy the rapport I get with the fans. I enjoy signing autographs and talking to them because it wasn't that many years ago, 6 years ago, I sat at Gainesville and was in their shoes. I was out there in the pits getting autographs and watching the Pro Stocks race. The neat part of it is that it makes you realize how lucky you are to be out here doing what you dreamed of doing.
What was it Jim said? It's hard to stay on top. Well, in round number 1, he faced a man who was on top of Pro Stock in the National Hot Rod Association for 10 years. Let's flash back. Here again is Dave McClellan and Scott Jeffrey and how they called it.
The Pontiac and the Ford. Here is the alternate coming in for Scott Jeffrion. We're talking about the Ford Quality Care Pro, driven by Bob Glidden. His opponent, Jim Yates, in the McDonald's Pontiac. Both cars have been running very good over the last several races. This could be a very close match, Scott.
I think it's going to be all in the tree. I think the lanes, both guys might experience some tire shake out there. They might need to short shift these cars a little bit just to get them down through that, take the motors out of that power range so they don't shake the tires in such a severe way.
So there is a lot of things a driver can do inside a Pro Stock car, maybe to compensate for conditions as opposed to, let's say, some of the nitro-type categories.
That's true, Dave. We have a lot more control over what the car is going to do from one end to the other once we're out there on the racetrack.
Jim Yates with the McDonald's Pontiac out of Joe Gibbs Racing had qualified in the number 6 spot. He had no number 1 qualifying positions. His best 2 number 3s throughout an entire season of racing. Now again, into the pre-stage beam. The question is here, will they both stage at a relatively normal pace? Or will somebody try to draw it out? Yates first in. Off the starting line, Bob Glidden had a giant advantage, but he could not run the number. Jim Yates at a 7:08 to a losing 7:13. Bob Glidden's reaction time almost perfect. That's great driving.
Sure was. It looked like the car wanted to roll a little bit there on the starting line and actually move forward before he actually let the clutch out. But Jim Yates made an excellent run here in the heat of the day, I can say that.
7:08 at 195 miles an hour when the 2 cars right in front of him shook the tires. Jim Yates advances to the semifinals of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge with a very narrow win. The margin of victory, you see it, 1/1000th of a second. A close race. Steve Evans.
Thanks, Dave. Boy, you needed all of that 7:08, Mr. Yates.
Thank goodness. I tell you, it looked like Bob was out a little bit, but this thing really come through and run good. That Pontiac Firebird is hauling tail out there today.
Saw the pair in front of you all over the racetrack. Did you short shift it, do anything in the cockpit?
Yeah, I thought the track was a little loose, and they said everybody said in the crew said get it in second gear early, and I tried to do that, but still just shook a little going into second and third, but it went right down through there.
Stay with us, everyone. We'll have more of round 1 when we come back here on TNN. Welcome back, everyone, to our live coverage in surround sound of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. The Pro Stock cars you see live on the racetrack right now are the ones that did not make the challenge. They're trying to qualify for tomorrow's Mopar Parts Nationals. Everybody here having a great time, I think. We having a good time? That's what I thought. They were all in the grandstands earlier, though, and in fact, most of them were in the grandstands last year for the 1994 challenge. Let's go back and have a look at what was one of the best in over a decade.
The 1994 Pro Stock Challenge saw 3 new faces qualify for the event. Kurt Johnson, Steve Schmidt, and Mark Osborne were all first-time entrants. In round 1, Osborne upset defending challenge champion Warren Johnson with a 739 to 747 hole shot win. Meanwhile, in the first round, Kurt Johnson picked up an easy victory when Bob Glidden fell. In the semis, Osborne got by Mark Howick with a solid 711 to a 715. That put the first number 8 seeded car into the final. On the other side of the ladder, Kurt put away former Johnson team car driver Scott Jeffrey on with a 710, and Scott's Dodge had tire shake problems. In the all-Oldsmobile final, Osborne left first, but the car and driver that was first to the 6s the day before was also the first to the finish line with another impressive run of 7.03 seconds, bringing the total to $75,000 won in 24 hours for Kurt Johnson.
Boy, that was a couple of days Kurt will never forget. Neither will his banker when he made that deposit. How's he faring today in the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge? Well, let's watch the race earlier with Steve Schmidt.
Celebrating a bit of an anniversary here at Raceway Park is the driver of the Oldsmobile from Sugar Hill, Georgia. Kurt Johnson, 1 year ago, was the first Pro Stock racer in the 6-second zone. And with that, he earned himself a $25,000 bonus from Holly Carburetor, and he went on to win this DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. Now, here he is in round number 1 facing Steve Schmidt, the engine builder out of Indianapolis, Indiana, and it is Schmidt, the higher qualified car based upon an entire season of qualifying efforts. He had 5 number 3 spots, 4 number 4s. The best for Kurt Johnson was a single number 3 position. This truly is a case for consistency, Scott Jeffrey on.
It sure is. You know, Kurt had the most lucrative day in his racing career here last year, and I know he's hungry. He's had a dry spell for a while now, and I think he might step up to the plate here and run pretty good, and I think he'll win this round.
Kurt Johnson in the lane nearest the camera. The Dynagear Oldsmobile is Steve Schmidt in the far lane. Kurt moving out of the groove right off the starting line. That cost him. You want to go a quarter of a mile in as straight a line as possible. Steve Schmidt, the lap time, a 7:14 at 195 miles an hour. Nobody really won the starting line war there, Scott Jeffrey. On.
Well, they left within a thousandth of a second, and as you know, in pro stock drag racing, races are won and lost by thousandths of a second, as we witnessed with Jim Yates and Bob Glidden earlier.
There you see Steve Schmidt. He had a relatively straight run, nice and smooth down the center of his lane, and by more than a car length, Steve Schmidt advances into the semifinal round. Steve?
Well, Steve, you won that one on car control.
Well, my guys did an absolute super job. We estimated the track was going to be really bad. We were really soft. We ran big speed. We didn't run very much ET, but we got down there and we won the race, and that's what we were trying to do.
Let's have a closer look at this talented engine builder from Indianapolis.
Steve Schmidt lives in Indianapolis, the city of speed. So it's no wonder that in 18 years, his business has grown into a thriving enterprise. In addition to a full-service garage, Schmidt Automotive builds an average of 250 production engines and remanufactures 500 crankshafts a month. Race applications include building 60 new racing engines a year and servicing another 250. The porting shop is strictly devoted to the research and development of racing cylinder heads.
The first year I was in business, I had 10 employees, and we've grown from there to where I have 64 right now. Like Smokey Yunick said once upon a time, the best damn garage in town, I think.
1994 was Schmidt's first full season in pro stock, and his engine development program produced the horsepower that propelled him to the winner's circle in Seattle.
To this day, I'm not sure it's really sunk in because of how hard in the years that we've dedicated to being good at what we're doing, and my learning curve as an engine builder and as a racer.
Leasing engines is another formidable aspect of Steve's racing program.
In trying to keep the technology that we work so hard for and the development that costs so much money, to keep that a little closer to home and not let that filter down through the other pro stock ranks. But we would lease engines and ultimately have the control of the final product, where it goes, how it's used, and what have you, and it's been very successful.
And you can bet that Steve Schmidt power plants will continue to take racers to new plateaus. TNN's live coverage of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge is brought to you in part by Pep Boys Automotive Super Center. We'll have the conclusion of round one when we return to English.
South of New York City. I'm Steve Evans. You know, we told you Mark Osborne lucked out last year, got into the challenge as an alternate. This year he did it the old-fashioned way. He earned it. Let's take a closer look at a very quiet man.
In the Appalachian Mountain region of eastern Virginia lies an American beauty where the past meets the present. Abingdon, Virginia. This picture postcard is also the possible home of the future of pro stock racing, Mark Osborne. With his wife Kim and son Zach, Mark finds quite a respite from the rolling thunder that is NHRA drag racing.
Abington area, actually living here. I've lived here for 2.5 years. It's very old. It's really, you can go back in time as you go through the city. You can go back as, say, as late as 1820, you know, as early as 1820.
Then there's the new part of town. We got Taco Bell, McDonald's, you know, so it's got a lot to offer. It's got the old style of living and the new style of living.
For little Zach, the new style of living means lots of toys, some of the carbureted variety.
Zach, he's my hero. He's got a heart big as the world, and one of these days he's going to be a racer of some kind. I'm not figured out if it's going to be motocross or pro bike or what it's going to be, but he's going to be something one of these days.
Zach's dad is at home in a pro stock cockpit, but the family man in Mark Osborne realizes that it's a home away from his true home, and who could blame him?
Well, I would really like to be known as a Winston champion, that I won a championship once upon a time, you know what I'm saying? But it's nice down here in this part of the world. I guess I'm no nature boy or big environmentalist by any way, but there's a lot of things in life to be more thankful for than a race win.
Well, let's find out how Mark Osborne did today. The final race in round number one when he faced off with, oh no, Warren Johnson.
Mark Osborne was in the near lane. He was up against the hottest car in pro stock this day. Warren Johnson with an easy victory. WJ running 7:09 at 195 miles an hour. Let's go back and take a look at this one in replay. Scott Jeffrey on poor old Mark, just a bit outclassed.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Warren made a really good run given the conditions out there of the racetrack.
You see Mark Osborne having handling problems. He very wisely lifted out of it. And WJ at a speed of 195.5 miles an hour served notice, I'm going to be tough to beat today. Let's go to the far end and Steve.
Well, Warren Johnson crawling out of the Oldsmobile. Got to be a happy guy with the round wind, but boy, it shook hard.
It shook, it moved around, did everything wrong, but at least we got the win last. That's all that matters on these deals.
The final four pairings are now set. It will be Warren Johnson against Steve Schmidt, and WJ gets the lane choice by virtue of the quicker time. Larry Morgan against Jim Yates, and Yates can pick it with his great elapsed time. That final four racing will be yours in just a moment. CNN's live coverage of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge is brought to you by Mopar, Chrysler Corporation.
I'll tell you, the first round is always the hardest. We've shown you the first round of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. What about the semifinals? Well, here is race number one in the second round. Dave McClellan and Scott Jeffrey uncalled it.
The semifinal round of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. It is Warren Johnson, the #1 qualifier, winner in round number one, up against the Dynagear Oldsmobile driven by Steve Schmidt. Joining me in the booth as they did in round number one, our color commentator, the driver of the Dodge Avenger, out of competition because of the vandalism on Tuesday night at the Wayne County Speed Shop facility. This is Scott Jeffrey on. Well, are you over your depression now, Scott?
Well, I don't know if I'm over it, but I'm feeling a little better. You know, it's reality has set in. It sure would have been nice to have the Mopar Parts Dodge Avenger down there and racing in this race today, Darrell and myself, but it's not a possibility, so we'll just watch these factory hot rods and listen to the music those motors make.
All right, now I got to tell you, as the Dolby surround sound just fills your room with the audio of 500 cubic inch race motors, this is going to be a tough challenge for anybody tackling this racetrack today.
It sure is, and I think Greg Anderson, you know, he's been doing an unbelievable job at Warren's car all year as far as tuning the car and having it, it's always fast, that's for sure. You know, he's hasn't reached the final yet, and I'm sure he's hungry here today.
A win here puts you in the final round, and at stake there, $50,000 in DuPont cash. Like they are, that's about as pretty a run as you could ask for, and the scoreboards and time show it. 7:07, 195 miles an hour for Warren Johnson. He obviously got it to quit shaking and got the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile to stick to the pavement. In replay, a pretty run indeed, Scott.
It sure was. You know, it didn't look like he had it stacked with as much energy as he did in the first round, and the car ran a little bit quicker. He ran 09, and now he's just running 07. He's obviously inching up on it.
Warren Johnson a substantial lead over Steve Schmidt's trailing 7:26. Down to the far end of the racetrack in Steve Evans.
Well, I'm going to open the door on the Performance Parts Oldsmobile and help Warren Johnson out to get his DuPont hat because he's going to the final round. Creeping up on it, huh, Professor?
Oh, yeah, that was a little bit better run than the first one, but then again, track's getting a little cooler, and you know, you get overly aggressive and it tends to bite you in the butt.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Steve.
I know it should come as no surprise to anybody that's followed Pro Stock for any amount of time that this guy, Warren Johnson, as he sits here live waiting for the final of the DuPont Automotive Finishes Pro Stock Challenge, should come as no surprise that Warren Johnson is in the program. WJ has only won this thing one time in 10 years, but he's a great racer. Let's take a look at the professor.
Two-time Winston Pro Stock champion Warren Johnson's accomplishments have far exceeded his humble beginnings, but not his aspirations.
We basically started in a four-stall garage working on these race cars, and it's transpired to this point in time, and it's strictly a case of that I had a vision of what I wanted to do in drag racing, and this is just part of it. This facility is approximately 26,000 square feet, and the room over here is where we store the transporter. We also do some of the metal fabricating and the dirty work, if you will, but we can drive the transporter in one door and straight out the other. The shop area here where the engine machining is done is approximately 10,000 square feet. That allows us to do basically everything in-house. The only thing we really farm out is crankshaft grinding at this point in time, and camshaft grinding. Other than that, everything else is built in-house. The other side, the shop is devoted towards block work, line honing, boring, honing, decking, cylinder blocks, and the room behind it is where all the assembly work takes place.
Warren's hard work has paid off. His 47 national event titles, his third highest in a pro category. The Professor was the first pro stock driver to break the 160, 180, and 190 mile-an-hour barriers. This year, Warren has set low elapsed time and top speed at 5 of the 6 national events. He became the 3rd member of the Holly 6-Second Club and has run a career best 694 with a speed of 199.15 miles an hour. Even still, Warren thinks a 200-mile-an-hour pro stocker is far off in the future.
We're pushing a lot of body through the air and normally aspirated. We're dependent on Mother Nature to supply us power. And I'd say we're still another 2 years off before we see 200.
However, despite those accomplishments, Warren has yet to see final round competition this season. Englishtown and the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge could turn that around.
So if you follow Pro Stock, it's no surprise that Warren Johnson is in the final. If you follow the DuPont Automotive Finishes Pro Stock Challenge, the other semifinalists probably won't surprise you either. Stick around, find out who it is.
We're back live, having a great time at E-Town, and we're getting ever closer to finding out who will pocket $50,000 in the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. Warren Johnson won one half of the semis. Who will he face in the final round? Well, take a look at this.
The last 2 cars in the semifinal round of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge finds one of our alternates, that being Larry Morgan. He is going to oppose this man, the McDonald's Pontiac, driven by Jim Yates. Now, Yates had a fine 7:08 in the first round. That was the quick time of round number 1. That has now been exceeded by the 7:07 we just saw out of Warren Johnson. But Larry Morgan is a winner in this race, Scott Jeffrey. On 3 times, he has taken home the big bucks in bonus cash from this special event.
He sure has, you know. Lady Luck always seems to be on Larry's side when it comes to this challenge. I don't know. It's just something about the challenge and Larry, but I think Jim Yates, if Warren went out and run 07, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jim run another 08 like he did first round.
There to the Jim Yates McDonald's Pontiac. Something went wrong on the starting line. A 7:41 subpar indeed for Larry Morgan. But as we have talked about, the luck that goes with Morgan in this special race came into play there. What do you think happened?
I think it's certain points on the racetrack, Larry's tires look like the square shape. They didn't look very round. They sure were shaking out there.
And Jim Yates obviously just having to coast his way through at that point. Larry Morgan gets on down there, though. His 7:41 doesn't do him a lot when he comes up against Warren Johnson in the finals, but this is a win and a chance in one round for $50,000. Steve?
And for the second year in a row, Mac, we have got an alternate, a car that really didn't qualify for the challenge going to the final round, but we all know what happened to Mark Osborne last year against Kurt Johnson. I'm sure Larry Morgan does as well. Morgan has got to be as stunned as we are. Headed for the finals. Unbelievable. You didn't like the way you got in, but you like the result.
Yeah, I don't like the way I'm getting there either, but I am there, thank God. I'm just happy to get the Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile into the final. You know, right now I'm not even qualified, so I hope I can run fast enough to get in.
Go find some horsepower. Okay, the final round will be Larry Morgan, the Super Clean Oldsmobile, up against Warren Johnson. And Johnson obviously will have the lane choice with his 707.
Now, Larry Morgan might drive a car that's the color purple, the Castrol Super Clean car, but when it comes to finals in this race, he thinks the color green. He just about owns this thing. 4 out of the last 6 times he's been there, Hey, he's lulled them into a false sense of security. Picked up 700s in the last round. Even Warren Johnson can't say that. Pro Stockers are coming up, and if you want to see some great flying Pro Stockers, why not get And They Walked Away 4. This is the greatest collection of spectacular motorsport shots that you've ever seen. A tremendous narration by Steve Evans, including all kinds of vehicles, both on the land and in the water. We also see a couple of Pro Stockers taking some flight. It is definitely the best one ever in the series. Why not call now and order And They Walked Away 4 and enjoy this in your own home. It's a tremendous tape offer from Diamond P. So call right now and get this one. Sit back and watch Pro Stocks flying. We got Pro Stocks racing next.
TNN's live coverage of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge is brought to you. Round race is coming up in just a moment.
We are back at Englishtown Raceway Park, the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. I'm way down now at the other end because the final round live is not far away. Let's go to Bob Fry on the starting line.
They told me that the objective here is simple. Just pick up about 0.3 of a second. And then they snickered a little bit. Tommy Roberts told me if I soften the clutch up in this car anymore, I'm going to have to pull it out. It's going to be an amazing final round. The guy that owns this classic against the guy that's looking for that first big win on the year. Should be great. Let's go to the booth and the call of the final in the Pro Stock Challenge.
The thunder of nearly 3,800 horsepower, if you want to take it. 2,800, let's make it. As the gasoline-burning Pro Stock factory hot rods get ready to run for $50,000. Scott Jeffrey on, as he has been all day long here in the booth with me. I know you wished you had been out on the racetrack today at the Wheel of the Avenger, but this is one of those unusual drag races. Warren Johnson's been the class of the field, but I wouldn't bet against Larry Morgan. I don't care what happens.
You never have enough luck, and Larry's always got the luck, and Warren's got the consistent fast race car, but Larry burns that tree down, so it's going to be some final right here.
The burning the tree down. Let me ask you about that. You've been involved in a few of those little step twos on the starting line. You think Morgan's going to try to use the professor up?
I don't know. I think sometimes he gets his goat, but I didn't mean it in that sense. I mean that he's on fire. He cuts low 420 lights normally.
So you're talking he's going to get some good reaction time. We're into the staging process. They light the pre-stage beam. Then they roll forward, light the bottom lights up there at the top of the tree. That means they're ready, and the starter can throw the switch. Nearly identical reaction times, but there is a massive difference in performance. The money stays in the family. Last year it was son Kurt. This year, as his wife Arlene celebrates on the starting line, Warren Johnson wins his second DuPont Pro Stock Challenge with a 7:03 at 196 miles an hour. Just a great day for Warren Johnson, Scott.
Just picture-perfect consistency. I'm happy for Greg Anderson. You know, he's been wrenching hard on that car all year, and that's the first time they've been able to win a race.
$50,000. That's the payoff that is going to be coming in just a few moments to Warren Johnson, who wheeled his GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile to a giant win. The elapsed time, 7:03. The speed, 196 miles an hour. That's moving here in the heat of the day at Englishtown, New Jersey. In just a moment, we're going to be down to the far end of the racetrack, and we'll have an opportunity to talk with the winner of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. You see him getting out of the car. That's WJ. We'll be right back.
Second grows and prospers. This generation is dragging the good name of Red Wing down the track at over 300 miles an hour. Pat Austin and Red Wing Shoes, American originals, dedicated to quality craftsmanship and generations of hard work. There is one difference. Red Wing Shoes been around almost 100 years. Pat's here and gone in less than 5 seconds.
TNN's live coverage of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge.
Doesn't get excited about much, but I think $50,000 will get your blood pumping a bit.
That'll get the adrenaline flowing in anybody.
Let's bring it in. Tom Speakman from DuPont. Brilliant 7:02 shot.
Well,
7:03.
We were a little conservative on the last run. You saw what happened first round. This track can be awful tricky. We just wanted to get down the racetrack. A little bit conservative. We felt that we had enough power to win.
What do you see for tomorrow? We're going to be back here live on TNN.
Well, hopefully it'll be about the same as tomorrow, not any worse. If it is any worse, maybe that'll play into our hands.
Tom, you got a great winner first time out for DuPont.
Yes, congratulations, Warren, on winning the first
annual DuPont Automotive Finishes Challenge. I know you'll be able to put this $50,000 to good use.
Oh, you can bet it. A lot of engine parts, right, Dave McClellan?
Steve, you're right. Look at that. Thumbs up from Warren Johnson. You sometimes don't see him smile very often, but today you do. Second time he's a winner. Let's take a look at the roster of the winners. 1985 was the very first of the special Pro Stock Challenges. For 2 years in a row, Bruce Allen was the winner. Then in 1987, Bob Glidden took over the winner's circle. 87 and 88, back-to-back wins for him. Then in 1989, it was Larry Morgan's turn to start a rather astonishing run. Out of 5 final round appearances now, Larry Morgan has won 3 of them. He repeated again in 1990. Darrell Alderman won the Pro Stock Challenge in 1991. Again, it was Morgan in 92. Warren Johnson won his first in 1993. Son Kurt Johnson in 94, and now 95 is Warren Johnson's year, the winner of the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge. Let's take a look back at a rather great day for the Pro Stock Challenge. So Warren Johnson, your 1995 champion, out on the racetrack right now. Just a sampling of what you're going to see tomorrow. Don't forget, there's going to be live coverage on TNN right here from Englishtown, New Jersey. NHRA Today will kick off the action with round number 1 of Top Fuel Racing. That's at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, another NHRA Today show. And then, of course, the final round from Englishtown and the Mopar Parts Nationals starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Let's go to the far end of the track. Here's Steve with a final word.
Well, Dave, I'm thrilled for Warren Johnson, but very disappointed and saddened for Mr. Larry Morgan. He did not qualify on that final pass for tomorrow's Mopar Parts Nationals, a race he won a year ago. A bitter pill to swallow. He does, however, leave with $10,000 in runner-up money. Bob?
Interesting final.
It is indeed an interesting final between Larry Morgan and Warren Johnson, and it was definitely his day. Out on the racetrack, the Top Fuel dragsters going at it. You just saw Corey McLenathan go 485, Connie Coletta a 481. For Bob and Steve, I'm Dave McClellan. We hope you've enjoyed our DuPont